So, you're thinking of doing the N2? Well, hopefully, this guide will become your Bible.
This video is nearly an hour and a half long, so give the video a like and you'll be able to find it in your homepage to return to whenever you want.
For reference, our motorhome is 3 metres high, 8 metres long and 2.8 metres wide, including the mirrors. If you are thinking of following the EN2 route through Portugal to the Algarve, follow this guide and you should be able to complete it without any mishaps. You need to allow a minimum of 10 days to complete the journey from kilometre 0 to kilometre 738 or vice versa. I would say 14 days would be easier and 18 days would be leisurely. Tourist information can be found in each town in the passport, as well as some EN2 souvenir shops. Firstly, decide whether to set off from Chaves in the north or from Faro in the south. Then, make your way to your chosen start point and visit the Tourist Information Office, where you will get your free passport and your first stamp. If you are starting in the south, you may find it easy to go to Lula first and get your passport at the Tourist Information Office there. The lady there is very helpful and you can park on some land behind the bus station, 300 yards away. It is much harder to park in Faro. Passports and stamps are free, with no obligations to buy or view an attraction. The lady in tourist information in Chaves is also very friendly and helpful. Once you have your passport, download the EN2 app using the QR code at the front of the passport, or better still, scan it from here up in the top corner so that you can pre-plan. The EN2 app is not the best or easiest to use. For example, the map link is not licensed for Google, so it is not clear where things are, and the addresses given often only take you to a general area similar to a postcode. Each page of the passport has a QR code which shows you where you get the passport stamped in each town along the route. However, to find places of interest in the area, you must refer to the app, or better still, Google. Many of the places mentioned in the app for places of interest and for stamping are not accessible with a large motorhome. In such cases, we have attempted to find parking within walking distance and give a what 3 words location for it. The EN2 is 75 years old and parts of it have been bypassed. One section in particular is in a very bad state. Our videos will point out these sections. Some of the towns and villages were not designed for cars, and the road surfaces and narrow streets are not really suitable for large motorhomes. Once again, these places will be highlighted in the video. Some of the towns suggested in the passport are a bit of a detour from the main route. You may want to research what can be seen in these places before making the detour. On our trip, we missed out a couple of towns. Before setting off for the next town, check it out for places to park by using Google Maps, Satellite and Street View. Where possible, we will suggest places to park. Be prepared for some very uneven road surfaces, and also be prepared to live off-grid with no electric hookup. Groups of motorbikers like to do the route on weekends, and it can get busy then, so try and plan a place to stay for the weekend and travel only on weekdays. And remember, getting the stamps is a bit of fun. You don't have to get one from every place. The sections below Abrantes have less interesting towns, so the southern leg can be done in a couple of days. Factor this in with your planning. Siesta time in Portugal is between 12:30 and 2:30, so shops and attractions are often closed at these times. Also, many attractions do not open until 10 a.m. You may want to factor this in when travelling. The EN2 is a very quiet road, except when you get into the towns. In the towns, the traffic can be very busy and the streets can be very hard to negotiate, so be prepared. If you stay at an unofficial stopover, do not drink alcohol, as the GNR police may ask you to move on at any time. Also, dogs barking at night is a common occurrence in Portugal. Navigating the EN2 can be fraught with problems. Your motorhome or truck sat-nav is great for getting around the towns and getting you to stopovers, as it keeps you away from the narrow roads, tight bends, and height and weight restrictions. However, between towns, it will try to take you on the fastest, shortest, and most economical route. In many cases, this will mean travelling down roads other than the EN2, so always check with Google Maps or a physical map to ensure you stay on the actual N2. There is one exception to this, which I will highlight. Ground signs are found on the whole route, showing the direction to take, but this sometimes takes you on a bypass around the towns. So once again, double check at each junction. As a good reminder, there are waymarkers along the whole route showing the distance to or from Chaves. They also have N2 shown on them. If you don't see N2 on the waymarker, you have left the route. You might do this intentionally, but you get my drift. Subscribe to our channel to follow the whole series and ask questions in the comments. We will be more than happy to give advice. Above all, enjoy your journey and you will feel like you have accomplished something when you get your final stamp. We arrived in Chaves on a Sunday and stayed in the car park on the riverside. It had no services, but it was level, hard standing and a 5-minute walk into the centre of the town. What 3 words? Packages, sides, tokens. On arrival, we took a walk to the tourist office, which is near the thermal baths. The lady there spoke good English and was very welcoming. She spent 10 to 15 minutes telling us all about Chaves and the Route 92. She also gave us some maps and a free N2 passport, which she stamped. Passport is a document which you can have stamped at various stops along the route. After getting the passport, we strolled over the footbridge across the river and continued on through the park to the bar at Kilometer 0, where we took photos at the roundabout, marking the start of the N2. And of course, as we were nearby, we decided to look in the bar too. Just for you guys. The bar is interesting, with lots of memorabilia for the Rota N2, some of which was for sale. Here we were given our Kilometer 0 stamp as we bought some drinks. After taking the drinks outside, we spent a little time looking at our passports and working our way through all the information provided. After our light refreshments, we returned to our stopover via the old Roman bridge with its ancient waymarkers prominent in the centre, an early example of signposts. On Monday morning, we got up early with the intention of getting our next passport stamp at the museum in Chaves. As we headed into the old town, the first church we came to was the church of Santa Maria Maior. Built in the 12th century, this church had elaborate decorations on the inside, as well as some beautiful stained glass windows. Chaves Castle is right across the square from the church, with the museum in front of it. Unfortunately, as is the norm in Portugal, the museum did not open until 10 o'clock that morning. So we decided to take the opportunity and have a look around the castle and the ancient quarter of the city. Castle battlements have now become some beautiful, well-tended gardens, from which you can get some fantastic views across the area. All that remains of the castle is this tower, which dates back to the 13th century. Chaves was also a major Portuguese stronghold during its war with Castile in the 17th century. The medieval part of the town is a warren of narrow streets and ancient houses. We still had a while to wait for the museum to open, so we went to a bread shop, got some pastel de Chaves, and sat down to have a coffee opposite the museum. Pastel de Chaves is a little bit like a Greg's steak bake. Eventually, the museum opened, so we popped inside and had a bit of a look around before finally asking for them to stamp our passport. The exhibits you see here are just the ones on show in the foyer of the museum. Stamping of the passports is done for a bit of fun. You don't have to have a stamp at every single location. This is something we found out after leaving Chaves. Another thing that Chaves is famous for is its thermal baths. If you go in to have a look around, you can have a drink of the famous thermal water for free. The water is served hot, fresh from the spring, and you get a slight background taste of all the minerals. Outside, you can see the bathing pools from days of old, and the spring, where the water comes out of the ground at 76 degrees centigrade. We walk back from the thermal baths along the riverside, which is in beautiful parkland. There are lots of bridges to enable you to cross the river, but there's also some stepping stones, which are a bit of fun to walk across. The river in Chaves is called the Tamiga. Ponte Trajano, the Roman bridge, is one of the finest Roman bridges in Portugal. The side of the road on the way back to the car park is the Roman Baths Museum. These baths were discovered back in 2005 when they did archaeological surveys before building an underground car park. The car park project was abandoned, and instead this museum was put in its place. Opened in 2021, the museum tells the story of the baths that were flattened by an earthquake in the 4th century. Skeletons of bathers were found in the baths during the excavations. Here we are at the start of EN2, 738 kilometres to go. "19 kilometres down the road, we came to the Vidago Palace Hotel. Here you have to make your own passport stamp by rubbing the marker with a pencil through the paper, so don't turn up without a pencil or a crayon. Hotel Vidago Palace is a magnificent building situated in its own parkland. King Carlos I had the vision for this hotel to be built as a luxury therapeutic resort of international repute. It was first opened in 1910, which is when the first Portuguese Republic was established. You are not allowed to go into the hotel building, but they do allow 20 people at a time to take a walk in the parkland and get some close-up shots. Rooms at the hotel start at €300 only and go up to €1,200 per night, including breakfast. The building is quite magnificent, but it's not as big as it seems when you see it from the end on. It is possible to park right opposite the gates to the hotel. The N2 route has marker posts every 100 metres along its length, with a larger post at each kilometre point. This helps to find the attractions mentioned in the N2 app. Another 11 kilometres along the road is Pedras Salgadas. This little town sprung up due to the local springs, if you get my pun. Here, if you turn right at the first roundabout, it will drop you down to a car park which is ample for motorhomes, and it is right outside the gates to the Pedras Salgadas Spa and Nature Park. Entrance to the park is totally free. You could easily spend a couple of hours just exploring the park alone. Pedras Salgadas means salty stone, and J.M. Lopez de Olivier first discovered the medicinal effects of the waters running from them. As you walk around the park, you realise what it must have been like in years gone by, when the only way to sample the medicinal effects of these waters was to come here and sample them for yourselves. Nowadays, Pedras mineral water can be found anywhere in Portugal. In its heyday, this place was a bustling resort, boasting its own hotel and casino and spas. Today, the hotel is a ruin, and all the visitors have disappeared. But they are trying to rejuvenate the resort with a village of eco houses, which you can find dotted around the park. It's a very interesting place to visit. This building is where the saltstone springs rise. It closes for siesta, but afterwards or before, you can go in there and you can sample the salted water. However, you have to sign a disclaimer because this water is so strong that it can only be given to you on prescription. The water in the shops is actually watered down. They only allow you to have a small cupful because if you have a kidney stone, it could make it worse. After looking round the park, you can get your passport stamped at the Tourist Information Office just on the side of the N2. The way this building is decorated just shows how much these waters are revered. Just look at the detail in the ceiling. That evening we stayed at Alveo village camping on Kilometer 37 at Vila da Aguieira. What 3 words? Populates, figure, sponsor. It cost €20 including electric. This was a lovely site in a natural setting surrounded by stones and trees. The facilities were very good. There was clothes and dishwashing facilities in its own purpose-built block, and very clean toilets and showers with plenty of hot water. The ladies' and gents' toilets were both in separate blocks. Bungalows are also available for rent. The pool area was very safe and clean, and nearby there was a reservoir and nature reserve for you to have a walk around. The next morning we set off for Vila Real. Interestingly, there was a stark contrast in the scenery above and below Vila Real, because the town is on the northern edge of the Douro Valley. Vila Real is where you will find the Palace of Matthias and also the cathedral. However, we found that parking in Vila Real and at the Palace of Matthias was a nightmare. We didn't even get our passport stamped. In hindsight, we may have been better turning up at the end of the day. With a bit of planning, we would have known that we could have got our passport stamped at the petrol station just as you leave Vila Real. After passing under the cargo viaduct, which carries the A4 motorway, you enter into the Douro Valley landscape, or should that be manscape? The bridge itself is quite magnificent to see, but the manicured hillsides of the Douro Valley is more magnificent still. We stopped for a while to take in the pure beauty of nature's tapestry. Terracing on the mountains is reminiscent of a child's puzzle book. Santa Marta de Penaguiao is the next stop along the route on passport at Kilometer 81. This town is well known for wine production, and it is the place where you can visit one of the world's first wine cooperatives. After leaving Santa Marta, you drop down through even more glorious countryside into Peso de Regua. Regua is the largest town on the Douro Valley and is visited by many cruise boats. Here you can get your passport stamped at tourist information or at the museum. Along the riverbank in Regua are lots of bars where you can do wine tasting of the local Douro wine and ports. For around €10 per flight, you can savour the taste of 3 or 4 local wines. There is a free air here just by the riverside, and just above that is an official air with hard standing and electric hookup at an extra charge. It is conveniently located for the attractions of the town centre. You could book a boat tour for the following afternoon, which will take you up a very scenic stretch of the river to Penaguiao, after which you can catch the train back to Regua. The total cost of the round trip for 2 people in 2024 was under £28, and it enabled you to see Penaguiao without taking the motorhome over the Penaguiao Bridge, which is quite tricky due to traffic. From Regua, an option is to go to Quinta da Padrela, which is just 15 kilometres off the N2. This is another free air with electric hookup available at €10. There are no facilities for black waste, but there are water and grey waste facilities, along with a toilet and hot shower. If you are lucky, you may even get access to the swimming pool. Jose meets everybody as they arrive and invites them to go on a wine tasting tour with him. Here you are given the opportunity to purchase the products but there is no obligation to do so. He also allows you to roam around the vineyard, picking grapes for yourselves and also watching the harvest if it's in progress. A half-hour walk up the hill from the vineyard is a small town called Barcos, which has a beautiful medieval area and a small cafe bar with amazing views from the balcony. Our next stop was Lamego. Lamego is famous for its church and the 686 steps you have to take to reach it. We stayed at a permitted stopover, which is around 100 steps below the church and about 500 steps up from the town. There are no services here apart from litter bins and a small cafe bar. It is not signposted, but it is on the left as you go up the hill. Being up near the top of the hill, it is very convenient to take an easy walk up to the church and have a look right from the top. The church itself is nothing spectacular, but the steps and the walk up to the church is quite something to behold. The views you get from the top are tremendous. Luckily for us, the bells stop ringing at about 9 p.m. and don't start again until 7 in the morning. The town of Lamego and its church on top of the hill were one of the highlights of the road trip. In the morning, we drove down into the town and passed behind tourist information, where we were able to get our passport stamped. The museum also stamps passports after 10 a.m, so we decided to have a look around until it opened. Across from the museum is the cathedral. Opposite is a hotel, and on top of the hill is the castle. It was nice to have a look around the cathedral and see its religious artifacts and amazing artwork. It was quite stunning. The main doors were made of steel, with a giant glass cross which acted as handles. After the cathedral, we thought we'd take a look at the castle. We started the walk up the hill, a 1 in 3 hill, not easy in 30-degree heat. But we would not be beaten, so we just took our time. This town evokes so much history. This shot really shows what the gradient is like. Just when you think you've got to the top, you turn round and find there's some more to go. And more and more. Eventually, you reach your goal. It is possible to climb up onto the castle walls, but we were too knackered to even contemplate it. After resting for a while, we made our way back down again, but we went the opposite way, which turned out to be a much gentler slope. We wish we had have realised that in the first place. At the bottom, you arrive at the main avenue, which is a tree-lined promenade with fountains and statues. Here you will find lots of cafes, and it is a really nice place to have some refreshment. But all the locals seem to do this between 10 and 10:30, so people are queuing 20 deep at the bars. At the top of the avenue is the start of the steps to the church. After just completing our climb up to the castle, we decided to give the steps a miss. Instead, we took a look around the local market, where people are able to buy the freshest of chickens. The Portuguese are certainly not naive about where chicken comes from. When the market is on, they even close part of the EN2 for it. A word of warning. In Lamego, the official routing of the EN2 takes you along a narrow two-way street, and then you have to turn right at a very busy, unmarked intersection, highlighted in orange and an X on the map. Because of this, the EN2 has been rerouted, with signposts guiding you along the main avenue to the steps, and then they take you right where the question mark is. However, on market days, the right-hand turn is closed off. So we have devised a fail-safe route to get through to the park up or the campsite. From the tourist office, marked with a star, turn right at the roundabout and go up the avenue until you see the Soldiers' Monument on your left, and turn immediately right there. Follow this road until you see a dual carriageway to your left. Follow the dual carriageway to the roundabout and then exit the roundabout signposted Viseu, EN2. From the roundabout, the next left will take you to the stopover at the church, marked with a thumbs up, or you can continue on to the campsite. The entrance to the campsite is very steep and you may bottom out in a large van. Also, you need to book in advance as space is limited. If there is no market or event on in town, you can also stay in the car park marked with a red triangle. Sorry about the long explanation, but you will thank us in the end if you go. Let us know in the comments if it helps you out. So what do you think of it so far? Let us know in the comments. If you're finding this helpful, give us a like and subscribe to our channel to encourage us to provide more content in the future. From Lamego, you pass through the pretty spa towns of Castro Daire and São Pedro do Sul, where you get your passport stamped at tourist information. The next place we visited was Viseu, and we stayed in the car park that's marked with the star, the side of the EN2 roundabout. Opposite the roundabout, about 100 metres further along, there is a street with a tram that takes you up to the town. Unfortunately, on the day we visited, there was a fair going on, and the fair was built right across the tram line. So obviously, the tram was closed. It is a free tram provided by the City Council. It is there to enable you to get up this very steep and demanding hill. So guess what? We had to trudge up the hill. The hard slog up the hill is worth it, however, when you enter the Cathedral Square, where Viseu Cathedral stands prominent at the top of the square, with Grau Vasco Museum to its left, and the cathedral cloisters to the right. Opposite the cathedral is the Church of Mercy, which is a more recent addition in the 18th century. This church has 3 altars dedicated to Our Lady of Mercy. You can get your passport stamped at the museum. The cloisters at the cathedral are well worth a look. It is surrounded by blue tile work, showing the skill of the artist's brush. The detail is quite incredible. The building's architecture was quite something too. There was a mass taking place inside the actual cathedral, so we were unable to take a look around properly. The old town itself is lovely to have a look around. With cafes and bars around every corner, you are able to take a seat and look around these magnificent buildings. This little chapel was more like a TARDIS when you looked inside. Viseu's history spans millennia, from early Roman times to the present day. Today, Viseu is a regional economic hub with a population of almost 100,000 people. It is also known as the Green City due to its vast amount of parkland. The whole city is clean and kept totally pristine. Nothing here seems out of place, with the old blending in with the new. The commercial area is a perfect example of the fusion of old and new, where you find artisan craft shops alongside phone shops and fashion stores. There was also some great examples of street art. The next stop along the route was Tondela at Kilometer 197. Here you get your passport stamped at the little cafe at the side of this pretty little square. It's not an easy place to park, so you have to use one of the side streets. Tondela is in the northern part of the Dao Wine, which is renowned for its delicious dry white wines. The owner of the cafe spoke really good English, and it was a good place to stop for a coffee. After Tondela, you travel down through the Dao Wine region to Santa Comba Dao. Here, we stopped on a side street as there is no parking for motorhomes. It was well worth stopping, however, because it was a lovely village to have a look around. It still has some medieval areas with narrow alleyways and cobble streets. All in all, a very pleasant place to have a look around and to grab a coffee or maybe some lunch. Here you can get your passport stamped at the Tourist Information Office, which is on the right-hand side, just as the N2 deviates to the left. The steps you see here will lead you down to the old N2, where it used to cross the Dao River on a bridge that is now closed. These small alleyways is the area where you'll find all the restaurants that the locals frequent. When you continue on the N2, you cross the new bridge and then turn off immediately and drop down to the old bridge, which is a good spot for some photo opportunities. From here, continue on the old N2 until you reach the bridge over the IP3. Here, you should join the IP3 and not follow the N2, as from this point on, it becomes a little more than a dirt track. So leave the N2 and join the IP3 at the point marked with the red X and rejoin the N2 at the blue tick. You can then follow the blue arrow to Mortagua or the green arrow to Baragem da Aguieira. This amazing feat of engineering carries the N2 across the top. It is another good place to stop and get some panoramic photographs of the scenery around you and the enormity of the dam itself. Afterwards, the N2 drops down below the dam, where you can get some more photos looking back. The N2 follows the river for another 15 kilometres to Penaguiao. When you reach Penaguiao, join the IP3 to Espinheira, and then drive up to the Windmill Museum at Portela de Oliveira. From the museum car park, you get views across the valleys right the way back to Santa Comba Dao. You can spot the route that you've been taking for the last 40 minutes. The old windmills are great to see and have a walk around. Some have been restored to full working order. Some others have been made into tourist accommodation. The museum gives you lots of information about windmills, water mills, and mills that are powered by man or beast. It explains the milling process and all the parts of the windmills that make that process work. Entry into the museum costs €2 per person, and at the end of your visit to the museum, you are allowed to go and take a look inside one of the actual windmills. They also stamped my passport here on the page for Mortagua because we had not visited that town, and it is very nearby. visit to the restored windmill was very interesting. The young lady explained how the whole top of the windmill was turned using this pole to align the sails with the wind. She then let me inside, which was much smaller than I had expected, and the grain storage area was very small indeed. Going up the stairs, you're able to see exactly how the old mill was constructed. It is so primitive, it is hard to believe that it ever worked at all. To think that these windmills have stood here since Roman times is incredible. The windmills are not mentioned in the EN2 app, but believe me, it is well worth the 10-kilometre detour onto the IP3. Afterwards, we took the 10-minute drive back to Penaguiao. Here, we stayed at the Parc de Campismo de Penaguiao, which is not the most picturesque of sites, but its location is perfect. And at $22.50 a night, it fit the bill. You can find it on Search for Sites. The toilet and shower facilities had seen their day, but they were clean and they were functional. Laundry facilities were available at €5.50 a time, but it was not exactly the fastest washing machine we've ever seen. The site is situated on the banks of the Mondego River, just 100 metres from Praia de Reconquinho, which is a blue flag beach and recognised as one of the best river beaches in Portugal. The boat you see here is a Barca Serrana, and you can take a trip on this boat for €18, which includes a wine and local produce tasting. But you must book this at least 24 hours beforehand. Another 500 metres down the river, you can hire kayaks and paddleboards. The beach area is very pleasant, with free parasols available for shade and lifeguards on duty every day from May to October. The safe area has been marked out for children to bathe, and a bridge from which you are allowed to jump into the crystal clear waters. In mid-September, the water temperature was actually quite pleasant. If you cross the bridge, it brings you to the Penaguiao side of the gorge, which sits 80 metres above on the cliffside. There is a winding path up the cliffside, which is quite strenuous, but it is doable with stops to admire the scenery as you climb, and you are rewarded with magnificent views from the pagoda at the Miradoro Penaguiao. We stayed in Penaguiao for 2 nights, for 2 reasons. One was that it was the weekend and there was lots of motorbikes out on the road, and the second was that temperatures were going to be 37 degrees both days, so we needed somewhere where we could cool off in the river. The views are as breathtaking as the climb up the cliffside. In the distance, you can see what remains of an old river crossing, which is thought to have been used by Roman centurions as they marched into battle. The vantage point gives you 270-degree views of the Medeival and Alveo river valleys. Looking back up the Alveo river valley and up onto the mountain sides, you could just make out the windmills standing proud on top of the hill. The square in the middle of the town has a pagoda covered in wisteria, which gives commanding views over the valley and is a pleasant place to take a beverage or two. This is also where you will find tourist information in order to get your passport stamped. From here, we could also see the river beach and the splendid restaurant situated just behind it. And there was a great EN2 photo opportunity. Also in the square is a small but well-presented church. All in all, the town is a very nice place to have a look around. The walk back down to the site was much easier than the walk up, but still we found it necessary to bathe in these beautiful crystal clear waters. How could we resist? We love Penaguiao, and I'm sure you will too. Make sure you don't miss out on this little gem. Continuing along on the EN2, we got our next passport stamp at the Central Bar at Vila Nova de Poiares. In the passport, this place is claimed to be the most western point of the EN2. There are more westerly towns on the passport, but this is the most westerly town on the actual EN2. And of course, as is the norm in Portugal, this place was beautifully well kept. It is found at Kilometer 248. Our next stop should have been Lusa, one of the Chaves villages, but to my regret, we missed it because it was not on the EN2 itself. We still managed to get our passport stamped at Goish, which is another magical riverside stop. Goish is very popular thanks to its river's crystal clear waters, which is probably why it has been inhabited since prehistoric times. The town gained greater importance in the 16th century during the reigns of King Manuel, who granted the town charter in 1516, and King John III, who had the Ponte Real bridge built here in 1533, a truly iconic construction. Crossing the bridge will make you want to stroll along the river, the tree canopy overhead protecting you from the heat. From there, the riverside walkway is in sight, as is the bar with a floating terrace and a river beach, calling you in for a dip on warmer days. The river allowed for mills to be built to harness the power of its waters, structures that still stand on its banks to this day. Another attraction is a zip line which crosses the river. Here you can glide from one side of the river to the other, passing under the arch of the bridge and right past the fountain. Our only regret when visiting this place was that we did not wear our swimming costumes. Bar and restaurant on the riverside is reasonably priced. I had pica-pau, which translates to woodpecker. It is so named because you eat it with a cocktail stick. If you are lucky, you might get a table where you can dangle your feet in the water whilst you are eating. It is free to swim in the river and to use the parasols on the island beach. We walked along the riverside and over the dam, being enticed by the cooling waters in the 37-degree heat. Forgetting our swimming costumes was a real mistake. There is a municipal campsite at Goish, and in hindsight, we should have arranged to stay there for a day or two. Just look how clean and refreshing that water looks. We got our passport stamped at a small hotel just to the left of the EN2 junction. After walking along the riverside, we went up into the town and got another stamp at the tourist office. Outside the tourist office is a fountain that shoots spoons up in an unpredictable manner. Argo decided to be very brave and have a game of Russian roulette with the water. I'll place an arrow at the point where she was stood, so you can see how close we were to a "you've been framed" moment. I was so willing that spout to turn on, but the gods were not listening. After leaving Goish, you travel another 46 kilometres, or nearly 30 miles, over the mountains with spectacular views as you travel on to Penaguiao Grande. This is another quiet, clean and perfectly manicured Portuguese town. At tourist information we were met by a very nice lady who told us the type of things we could see in the village, as well as the dam that we could see beyond the village. The Church of Our Lady of Assumption is found in a square in the centre of the village. The interior of the church is quite something to behold, with beautiful artwork everywhere. Walking back from the church towards the tourist information, you come to the House of Mathematics. This building is very unusual in the fact that it has plaques covering the whole of the walls with mathematical formulas and information about some of the great mathematicians of our time. What is very unusual about this place is the fact that there is very little information about it on the internet. If you know anything about its history or why it exists, let us know in the comments. Personally, I think it is a hell of a way of making revision notes. Another couple of kilometres along the EN2 brings you to the Baragem da Aguieira, which holds back the river Zezere and forms the Cabril Reservoir for hydroelectricity production. The reservoir is best known for its beaches and water sports. The next leg takes you through the very centre of Portugal, driving from Ceuta to Montargil in a day. Once again, the EN2 takes you through some outstanding scenery as it wends its way towards Ceuta. However, the twists and turns never give up, and poor old driver has to concentrate fully on the road ahead, so the landscape passes by unnoticed. On arriving at Ceuta, we headed straight for the official air at the football ground, but we decided that this was not suitable and didn't feel right, so we returned to the tourist information to ask where else we could stay. She told us to stay on the other side of the river, at the end of the Roman bridge, next to some toilets. It was a beautiful spot. What 3 words divulges omen inside. Although not the official air, motorhomes are accepted here. Fresh water and bins are provided, and the public toilets are kept immaculately clean. We were parked next to a British couple, originally from Scarborough, but now living in Spain. They told us they come here often, so that they can visit the restaurant at the other end of the Roman bridge. They said that in their opinion, the restaurant is absolutely amazing, and the prices are very reasonable. Unfortunately, it was closed for refurbishment while we were there, opening 2 days later. They were happy to wait that 2 days. They recommend it to everybody. Upriver from the Roman bridge is a lovely park area with a promenade along the riverside. On the riverbank there is a restored watermill, which was used for grinding cereal crops into flour and crushing olives for their oil. In times gone by, this area was the main meeting place for the town of Cirta. Right next door to the mill is a large community oven, which was probably used for baking bread using the ingredients provided by the mill. The area was probably an earlier form of a worker cooperative where the community could work together. We took a walk along the riverside, hoping to get to the castle, but it was a very close evening, and the oppressive heat meant that we couldn't go any further, so we turned back halfway, deciding to spend the evening watching dusk fall over the Roman bridge. This is the geodetic centre of the country and not the geographic centre. The difference is that the geodetic centre refers to a point found in a coordinate system, while the geographic centre refers to the centre of a geometric figure. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, this point in Vila Real is where the coordinate 00 is marked on national maps, meaning that all measurements are made from that point in latitude and longitude. And it is also at this high point that it seems that the entire country can be seen from the top. So, this was the centre of the country, but we still had to reach the midpoint of the EN2. We continued into Vila Real and got our passport stamped at the library there. Apart from the geodetic centre, there was nothing else to see there. As you leave Vila Real, you come to a roundabout where you need to follow the signpost for Vila de Gru and Penedo in order to stay on the old EN2. 3 kilometres along the old EN2, you come to milepost 369, the midpoint of your journey. We were a little disappointed that the midpoint did not have a special marker or anywhere to get a passport stamp, so we just had to make do with the picture. This marker post can only be found on the old EN2, and on the new EN2 it's not even marked. There was no turning back now. We were past the point of no return, and still the road continued, left and right and up and down. The EN2 is a real road for driving enthusiasts. After another 5.5 kilometres, you come to Penedo Furado. This is another recreational area where you can go swimming, kayaking and trekking. There is ample parking at the two Miradouros for large motorhomes, from which you can get magnificent views of the valley below. Towards the top of the valley, there is a trek that takes you towards some waterfalls. We would have loved to have done this walk, but once again, the heat was too oppressive for us to attempt it. So I took the easy way out. I just moved from one mirador to the other, a distance of maybe 300 yards. Treks are well marked out and boarded to make walking much easier. If you were feeling up to it, I would suggest you factor in around about 2 hours in order to take this trek to the waterfalls. For the next 12 kilometres, the road got narrower, the bends got tighter, the drops to the side got steeper, and the hills got higher, and the undulations more intense. I really enjoyed that section of the drive. Not so much for Margot, though. She was holding onto the door handles, as if that would help her. This 20-kilometre section between Vila de Rei and Sardou is best suited to confident drivers, although this clip is at double speed, just for fun. At kilometre 386, you reach Sardou. We made the mistake of driving into the town to get our passport stamped at the tourist office. but Sardol is not really suitable for large vehicles. Instead, we suggest you stop at Nicer near the roundabout as you enter Sardol and walk the 5 minutes to the tourist information. Sardol itself has little to offer. The last stop in the passport for the central region is Abantes at Kilometer 402. We had planned to stay here overnight at the municipal campsite, but apart from the castle, there didn't seem to be much else here. Also, the campsite reception was closed until 3, so we took some pictures of the campsite for you guys and then moved on. We stopped 15 kilometres further on at a small town called Benposta. There is a free air here, which we used as a stop-off to get some food. At Snack Bar Aquarius, Elisa and Gilberto treated us to an enjoyable lunchtime meal, which cost €9 for 3 courses. They also stamped our passport for us. Our next stop was Pont de Sor, where the most interesting thing was a beehive. Here, they gave us a sticker instead of a stamp. So we continued on to the Montagil Reservoir and decided to stay by the reservoir for a couple of nights. We stayed at Orbitor Montagil, which was a very nice place to stay, with a lovely pool to cool off in. There was a shop, bar and restaurant on site. Toilets and showers were cleaned constantly, and the grounds were kept in fantastic condition even in the off-season. There was plenty of sunbeds for us to relax on, some in the shade, some in the sun, some on grass, and some on paving. It was the perfect place to relax after all the driving. That night, we were treated to the harvest supermoon as it rose above the horizon, scattering its gentle glow across the waters of the lake. We were now in the Alentejo region, which is world famous for its cork production. Our first point of call after Montargil was Mora, where we got our passport stamped at the Museum of Megalithism. It was at this point that we realised we'd missed the town of Avis, but we were not turning back, so we'll have to catch it some other time. In fact, this whole final leg consisted of places we missed, because the places of interest are not really on the N2. Arusha is a prime example. In the passport, Arusha's byline is "Cross the bridges." We expected there to be some amazing bridges to cross, but we found out that the bridges were all similar to this one. They must have bought a job lot of them, because we crossed at least 5, all the same style. The town, however, has a nice river beach, a bull ring, and a riverside walk. The air here was being used for a fairground, but there was plenty of parking for motorhomes near the bus station. Arouche is also a centre for cork production, and you can take a tour which explains the process. The cork oak is the only tree that can survive after its bark has been stripped. The bark cannot be harvested for the first 25 years of its life, but then it can be harvested every 9 years. Here you can see the difference between old and new bark. They harvest the cork with special axes, and afterwards they mark the tree with paint showing the last digit of the harvesting year, so they know how long to leave it. However, it is not until the third harvest that the quality of the cork becomes the best, and the older the tree, the better quality the cork. After harvest, the bark is boiled and then flattened in a press. It is then cut into strips before the actual corks are punched out. The best quality corks sell for €1 each. These oaks are due for harvest next year. Leaving Carusha on the N114, you eventually come to Montemor-Novo. As you enter the town from the north, you come to a T-junction and turn right for the N2. Just 150 metres along you see the big N2 75 Anos marker, which is right outside the tourist office. However, having checked on Google Street View, we decided that there would not be room for us to park by the castle or the tourist information, so we parked in a little car park and walked up to the tourist office and the fire station for our stamps. But then, when we saw the castle higher up on the hill above, we decided it was too warm to climb up there. The castle car park is quite small and only suitable for vehicles up to 7-ish metres, so beware. After Montemoro Novo, you have choices to make. You can take the N253 to Alcázar de Sal and then the N5 to Turau, or you can stay on the N2 passing through Escorial and Alcachofas. We stayed on the N2. Take note, don't go into the historic centre of Alcachofas in a big vehicle. You will regret it. Here, my senior years caused me to scramble my thoughts, and I mixed up the towns of Alcázar and Alcachofas. So instead of looking for the N257 to Viana do Alentejo, I looked for a restaurant, and when I couldn't find it, I continued on the N2 to Turau. So we never got to see the castle and convent at Viana de Alentejo. Alcácer de Sal was on our way home, so we actually visited it later, but we'll show it to you now. It is another well-kept town located in the Setúbal district of Portugal. It sits on the north bank of the tidal river Sardo and was a major port for the production of salt, hence the name do Sal. Today you will find alleys and stairways leading up to the castle and a few churches to explore. There are also cafes and bars along the promenade on the other side of the river from the motorhome parking. We got our passport stamped in the tourist office at the end of the road bridge. We found it a very pleasant place to while away an hour or so and break up the journey, taking a gentle walk along both banks of the river and stopping at one of the cafes to have a pastel de nata and coffee. The town is nothing special really, but it does have something that you just can't quite put your finger on. Whichever way you go, from Montemoro Novo, you eventually get to Turau and continue south on the N2 to Ferreira do Alentejo. Here, it is best to take the bypass to the west of the town until you reach the roundabout with the N121, where there is good parking near the sports area. What 3 words? Offstage Patriot alert. Tourist information and the Calvary Chapel is just a 10-minute walk from here. That night, we stayed at Baragem da Aguieira, which is a permitted air. What 3 words? Inflates, radicals, chemically. Fresh water and bins are provided, but there are no black and grey waste facilities. Essentially, it is wild camping. The area is right next to the reservoir, on some level ground, with plenty of trees for shade. Alternatively, there is level hard standing which can be used. On arriving here, we were greeted by what seemed to be wild dogs, but we later found out that they belonged to the goat herder and were there to keep an eye on the goats. They were very friendly and caused us no bother. They just came over and shared our shade from the van. They did wake us up a couple of times during the night, barking at the goats if they came anywhere near our motorhomes. But other than that, we had a very quiet and peaceful night's sleep. The next place in Passport was Aljustrel. Here, the tourist information was closed, but you can get a stamp at Cafe Alianza. This town's claim to fame is its mines, which produce zinc, lead, and copper. Castro Verde is 21 kilometres further on the N2. Here we made the mistake of driving into the main square, Plaza da República, which leads you on to some very tight streets, some with weight and length restrictions. Luckily, we found our way out without any scrapes and found some on-street parking near the hospital. What 3 words? Lolly, look out, mambo. The small town of Castro Verde is quaint and typically Portuguese, and well worth a visit. If you are a bird watcher, then plan to spend some time here to see great bustards. The town is also famous for its fiera around the 3rd week in October. This is the Royal Basilica of Our Lady of Conception. From the outside, you wouldn't think much of the Royal Basilica, but this 18th century church is covered inside by azulejos, blue-painted tiles. The majority of the tiles commemorate the 12th century Battle of Orique, which is believed to have taken place not far from here. After this battle, Prince Afonso Henriques was made the King of Portugal, and Portugal became an independent state. Tourist information was hidden behind the Igreja de Nossa Senhora de Medios, the Church of Our Lady of Remedies. It's accessed through an archway to the right. Another 21-kilometre drive and you arrive in Almodovar. We parked near the N2 sign by the roadside, but later found a large car park near the Rotunda o Sapateiro, close to the tourist office. There are 3 roundabouts in the village depicting a cobbler, fireman, and a miner, and all are stunning sculptures by Aureliano Aguiar. This map shows where you will find them. The miner is on the N2 as you leave the village. The village of Almodovar is not really a tourist destination, but there is plenty to see here. It is the last stop in the Alentejo region, situated just 80 kilometres from Faro. It is on the edge of the Algarve. It is a pretty village to walk around, with its amazing street art and traditionally painted buildings. Also in the village, you will find a museum depicting a local artist and the shoemaking industry, which the village was well known for. Tourist information is at the entrance to the old convent, which is absolutely beautiful inside. We were surprised by Almodovar. It was much more than we expected. 5 kilometres further on down the road, it's like driving through hell as you climb up into the mountains and cross into the Algarve. This part of the route is very challenging for the driver, but also extremely scenic. We stopped for a while at this viewpoint to take in the vista before us. This is Miradouro de Caldeirão, which you'll find at kilometre 698. Unfortunately, the heat haze hides the natural beauty. Was that a swing I just spotted?
Oh my goodness. Be careful, it overhangs. Alright, stop it now. Come back. You just like to scare me, don't you?
Well, that was fun, as was the road as we dropped down into the Algarve towards the city of Lul. But guess what? When we looked up Lul in the app, we found out that we had already passed 2 of the places, namely Amixial and Barranco do Velo. This is when I realised that the places in the passport are actually the municipalities, not the places of interest. But we went into Lule anyway, and were quite pleased that we did. We got our passports stamped here at Tourist Information and at the Town Hall. But both were stamps for the places we'd missed, rather than Lule itself. Right next door to the Town Hall is the Municipal Market. Here you could find just about anything you wanted, beautifully displayed on the vibrant stalls. Local farmers displayed their wares of flowers, vegetables, honeys and cheeses, and meat. And the fish market had just about every type of fish you could wish for. The place was so clean you could eat off the floor. Lule also boasts a castle which you can visit, but we found it closed because they were setting up for a special exhibition. So all in all, we didn't regret going to Lule in any way whatsoever. So we are almost there, but first we had to visit São Brau de Alportel, which is a typical Algarve town. The town is known for its flower festival, the Festa das Tochas Floridas, where the streets are carpeted with floral displays covering a 2-kilometre stretch. The festival is held at Easter, and these statues are there to commemorate it. After driving 738 kilometres down the centre of Portugal, passing through mountains and valleys, vineyards and cork oak fields, towns and villages, and having seen so much of the real life of Portugal, you arrive at the last marker on the route, the roundabout at kilometre 738. You will feel a sense of achievement and a sense of relief that it is all over. The incessant rattling of your suspension smoothing out the road and the noise of the aircon battling against the heat are forgotten as you savour the moment. We found street parking near the roundabout. What 3 words? Sailing, engage, digital. You can get your final stamp at the print shop on the roundabout or walk down to the marina where there are a few places that have stamps. But wherever you get your stamp, you can sleep content that you have completed the epic EN2 road trip. Your passport will be a constant reminder of the places you visited. I'll do my best at pronouncing the places that we visited. Chaves and Vila da Aguieira, Vila Real and Santa Marta de Penaguiao, Peso de Regua and Lamego, Castro de Ilha and São Pedro do Sul, Viseu and Tondela, Santa Comba Dao and Mortagua, Penaguiao and Vila Nova de Poiares, Lusa and Goish, Pedro Grande and Serta, the middle of the road and the centre of Portugal, Vila de Rei and Sardol, Abrantes and Ponte de Sol, Avish and Mora, Torusha and Montemoro Novo, Viana do Alentejo and Alcazar do Sal, Ferreira do Alentejo and Aljustrel, Castro Verde and Almodóvar, Lula and São Brau de Alportel, finally Faro. And don't forget, there's places for notes in the back of the passport. We forgot completely. Yes, we had a couple of blank pages in the passport, but that gives us a good reason to return another time. We hope you enjoyed coming with us on this incredible road trip. Do it yourself, you won't regret it. Join us next time when we show you around our favourite place in the whole of Portugal. Safe travels!